It's never only the head coach.
Never had Dejan Kulusevski. He's never had James Maddison in his squad. There are certain players that the team just doesn't suit them, and I think Abrich isn't one at Arsenal.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Pint-Sized Pressers. I'm Dan Bennett. I'm joined by HaytersTV's Nayan Murthy. No Aisha Galati this week. She has ditched us for a trip to Spain, which is lucky for some.
I know, I can't believe it.
We're here always at Box Bar Piccadilly, showing all the weekend's games. It's a different weekend this week, obviously FA Cup weekend, so not all the teams we normally talk about are playing. But we've got some tasty FA Cup ties to look forward to, which they will all be all the ones on TV, all showing at Box Bar Piccadilly, so come and check it out. Yeah, great place to come and watch your sport. But we are going to start with a team who's not playing this weekend, a team I think we have to start by talking about, Tottenham, who have sacked Thomas Frank with the team 16th in the league. Before we start talking about it, here's what he had to say in his last press conference as Spurs boss.
I understand it's easy to point on me, but I also think it's never only the head coach, or the ownership, or the directors, or the players, or the staff. Is everyone. If you do something right, you will build something that can last. Of course, we are not in a top position now. Everyone knows, directors, ownership, myself, what position we are in, and what we need to improve, and what we need to do better, and that's what we're working very hard on.
Okay, Nayan. So we finished the show, we wrapped up, we were ready to edit it all, and then checked our phones and saw that Ígor Tudor has agreed to become the Spurs boss until the end of the season. So we've come back to do another section. There's still some good stuff that we spoke about, which I think we'll probably end up using about the problems at Spurs and what they're going to do in the summer, which is still relevant. But in terms of the now, Ígor Tudor is going to be the man for the end of the season. Your reaction, first of all? Surprised? Came out a bit out of the blue, it seems, this one.
Well, I mean, according to reports, Tottenham were desperate for somebody to have by Monday for training, which might be why they've done it now. And it explains a lot about why Frank was sacked in the lead up to this. They must have had a dialogue with Tudor before. But I am surprised that it's him that they brought in. There are a lot of other managers, especially when you're talking about interim managers, there are a lot of ones that, for example, they brought in Heitinga very recently as they were going for an interim manager. Obviously, he hasn't had the best managerial record with Ajax, but what he does have is, like, he was under Frank and the players kind of know him already, so that might have worked. Or, like, De Zerbi just left Marseille. I'm surprised Ígor Tudor, who hasn't had the best relationship with fan bases, especially the Juventus fan base that he was playing before, and I just think it seems very desperate.
Well, it's just the unknown, isn't it? So I think, you know, with all the names that link with the job, most of them would have been known to English football fans and Spurs fans in particular, but Ígor Tudor is relatively unknown. You know, obviously we know a bit about him from his time at Juventus, which didn't really go as he would have hoped. But ultimately, this just seems to set themselves up for a summer appointment in terms of a manager that will be available in the summer that they're going to have to wait for. Because you think if it was De Zerbi or if it was whoever, they would have just gone and got them now and appointed a permanent manager. Whereas Ígor Tudor, in the interim, kind of leans towards maybe a Mauricio Pochettino, Robbie Keane, someone like that in the summer when the current season is over.
Definitely. It is either Robbie Keane or any manager that's managing a team in the World Cup. I don't know, obviously Pochettino seems like the main person there because, well, he managed Spurs before, but there's also other people like I mentioned earlier, like Nagelsmann.
Yeah, there's going to be some overlap. We're going to have to, some careful editing is going to be required.
But I just, the thing with this new manager is Spurs were obviously trying for stability, especially when they had Frank. I think that's what they were trying, and they kept hold of Frank for so long. And then the fact that they've gone from having Frank and having stability, and now just going, we want someone now to save us from relegation. So they were genuinely worried that they were going to go down first, and second of all, it shows that they've kind of gone away from that whole strategy. And if I was a Spurs fan, that'd be really making me nervous at the moment.
They must, you know, truly believe he's the man to come in and give them a a quick lift,
Well,
basically. I mean, that's what they require, and this is what we spoke about earlier, which you might get to see.
Yeah.
But they forget about the long term. They need a short term manager who's going to come in now and get them results and lift the team and bring everyone together, because they're 5 points clear of the relegation zone, and their whole focus has got to be on how they survive this season almost, and they must feel like they've seen enough from Tudor and from what the conversations they've had with him to be the man to do that. But
they're going for an artificial bounce, which works in the short term, but everything that's come out of the club over the last since Ange was sacked was we're going for long-term solutions. That's why
I think that's gone out the window with this season.
They've had and I think the main problem I see is that Spurs, it wasn't going well for Frank before January, and they had a whole January window where they could have brought in players either for Frank or sacked Frank and gone, we're going to get in a manager and we're going to buy players for that new manager, and they've done neither. And that kind of goes, well, they're gonna try and not go down this season, and then next season they're gonna need a new manager and need a whole new rebuild with only one window when they had two opportunities, and it's kind of a waste.
Well, we spoke earlier, it'll be after this conversation that you'll see this, about all the problems that Tudor's got to fix, that we won't go over again because we've already spoken about that. But it's a big job, isn't it, to come in immediately with all the injuries they've got, with all the attacking problems they've got, to come in and suddenly lift this team and suddenly get results. It's like Thomas Frank said, it's not just the manager that's the problem, is it?
It's a free hit for Tudor.
Yeah, and you think if he does well, maybe he puts him in himself in contention for the job, would you?
Well, that's what reports are saying. If he does well,
yeah, it's almost like a trial run for him, maybe as well, and he's a potential option for the summer. But again, you think if they really felt he was the man, maybe they would have just got him permanently, which to me suggests that it is going to be a Pochettino or a Robbie Keane. I think Pochettino, he's the clear standout for me. He's available in the summer because he's going to take charge of the USA in the World Cup, and then he'll be available after that when he leaves, which he's expected to do. So
yeah, I mean,
it's written in the stars, isn't it, for a Pochettino return?
It would be a fairy tale return, and I think there are many positives about it. He plays the Tottenham way, as every Spurs.
That famous Tottenham way.
Yeah, he does. He plays attacking football, and but the issue with Pochettino is when he picked up the squad in 2014, there were a lot of players that you can either say he made world class or became world class, in terms of Jan Vertonghen and Christian Eriksen being the main two, and Harry Kane was already in the squad, and Tim Sherwood had fought tooth and nail to keep him. And I think at the moment, are there players like that?
Yeah, this is what I was just about to say. I think one of the biggest problems Spurs have got is the quality in the squad. They need more, especially in attack. They don't, for so long they relied on Harry Kane and Heung-min Son, world-class attackers in their prime who scored 20, 30, 40 goals a season. They don't have anyone like that. And the injuries are a massive factor, because I think Maddison and Kulusevski are very good players and they would make a difference. And Solanke has been missing for half the year, has only just come back. With all those three there, I think they'd be better off. But it's going to be really tough for Tudor to come in and suddenly give them a lift, I think.
And Spurs do have good players at the moment. And they're not the level that we were talking about with Eriksen and Vertonghen. But
I mean, they're of the level enough to finish in mid-table of the Premier League.
But the question I've got is, what
definitely
does this tell someone? If you're Mickey van der Ven, who I'm saying is one of the good players, Christian Romero, probably another of the good players, Pedro Porro, who's reportedly the only player that Frank really thought could make the jump to an elite club from Spurs. What does that tell you in terms of the club are going for Ígor Tudor for a certain amount of time to stay up? Does that make you want to stay?
That's the reality of the situation, though.
But does that make someone like Mickey van der Ven, who's reported...
But I mean, at the same time, they're the ones who've been out on the pitch playing.
Yeah.
They have to take responsibility as well. It's not all on the managers. So it's an interesting one. Certainly not one we expected to be talking about this afternoon, but they have Ígor Tudor, the interim manager of Tottenham. And we'll put some stuff in now from our earlier conversation about, what Tudor's problems are going to be, what the next permanent manager's issues are going to be that he's going to have to fix. So we'll include some of that chat now. So we heard from Frank there in his final press conference. Obviously said he was going to be convinced that he was going to be in charge, which turned out it's not going to be the case for the Arsenal game next week. interesting comments about the problems going deeper at Tottenham, which is something that I think's been spoken about for a long time. You know, he's pointing to the fact it's not just the head coach's fault. He's obviously taken some responsibility for his part in it, but pointing to the fact that there are other issues at Tottenham as well. I mean, you wrote a good piece for the website, which I enjoyed. I mean, what are the problems you think they need to fix? Because it's not just the head coach, the manager, is it?
There's so many problems, and I think Frank has spent a lot of time defending himself, and almost rightly so, because he's under fire. The manager's always in the press conferences, and they're the ones under fire. But there are so many other issues that aren't fully his fault. The main one is the injury issues at Spurs. No other club in the Premier League this season has had to deal with the amult of injuries that Spurs have had.
Exactly the same last season as well.
Well, the last 3 years.
This season and last season, and last season was pretty terrible.
And a lot of people blame Dan Postecoglou for that, and it's kind of come to fruition that it probably wasn't his fault because it's continuously happening. He's never had Dejan Kulusevski. He's never had James Maddison in his squad. He had Dominic Solanke for less than 20 days, who's Tottenham's best striker. Richarlison's been out for over a month. Mohamed Kudus is out till the next international break, which is over a month away, and he hasn't played since December. So I think Thomas Frank's really been hindered by the amount of players he can pick. And also with the injuries, you can say that it's a manager's fault for not rotating their squad properly, as Ange Postecoglou kind of got battered with before. But when you don't have the players fit, so when there are players injured, you have to use those same 11 players consistently.
At risk of injury as well, more risk of injury, doesn't it?
Exactly. Pedro Porro had to play every minute because Jed Spence was playing at left back with Destiny Udogie injured. They didn't have any backup for him at left back other than Spence, which means Spence gets injured and then Pedro Porro gets injured as well. And then you see at the weekend, in midweek, Jed Spence had to play at right back even though he'd just come back from injury because Pedro Porro is not fit and Destiny Udogie isn't fit. So that keeps happening, and you can't blame a manager for that. I'm not sure who you can blame. Spurs have changed their medical staff 3 times since Ange Postecoglou took over, and the injuries have kept piling on no matter what. Another issue is like at this club, aside from the injuries, which again, managers have injuries and maybe they could do better with their squad, but the recruitment is another massive issue. Ange Postecoglou talked about it on the overlap with the players that he tried to sign: Mark Gay, Antoine Semenyo, Brian Mbeumo, and Thomas Frank went in for both wingers, not only in the summer but also in the January transfer when he was very open about the fact that he tried to bring in Semenyo and it didn't work because Manchester City came in from as well, and Spurs obviously weren't able to compete with Manchester City at the time. And I just think that if Spurs went in for players they needed, they bought Conor Gallagher, they were very obviously needed a player that could pass the ball forward, and they needed a forwards. And they bought a left back from Santos, who might be a good player, isn't there for the now. He isn't there to make the squad better now, which is exactly what they need. They're 16th in the Premier League.
Yeah, well, this is what Postecoglou was saying, wasn't he, in that interview you mentioned on the overlap, where he was pointing to the fact that to build on the 5th place finish they recorded in his first season in charge, they needed to go out and sign proven players. I mean, they signed Dominic Solanke, who is, and I think he's made them somewhat better, but not quite had a good enough impact to
he has
results.
And you seen, like, as soon as he came back, that Manchester City game he scored, Dortmund game he scored, like, and you know that's what a proven player comes in and does. Conor Gallagher's again wasn't the player they needed, but again's a proven player, has come in, played every game in the Premier League and been very good in most of them. But what they did need was they needed a player that could bring the ball forward from midfield, which kind of Paulinho that they already had and Bentancur proved that they weren't able to do over the season, and they didn't find one, and they needed a winger because Kudus is injured, and on the left wing they consistently don't play someone there because, well, Frank must have thought the players he had weren't good enough.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, finally, the last thing on Spurs is the stability of the club. Like, obviously they've sacked managers, but even taken away from the fact that they've had 5 managers in the last 7 years since Pochettino got sacked, the board completely changed, and the players keep changing as well. But they've sold their top scorer over the last 3 years. Every single one, Kane, Son, and Brennan Johnson now have all gone. And as we joked about it before, when Johnson did leave on the show, like, probably not the best way to build a football club, selling your top scorer.
I mean, I think I said it maybe last week or the week before. I was very surprised they didn't go out and strengthen in attack in January, just to give the attack that sort of short-term boost it needed. I mean, for example, Ryan, who's gone to Bournemouth. I mean, what a good player he looks. You think, why didn't Spurs go for him? It's just, I know it is, in hindsight, it's easy. Yeah. It's only been a few games, but it strikes me as strange. But like you say, I think without the injuries, I do think they'd be in a much better position this season.
Yeah. I also think there are other clubs, and I think what Thomas Frank and the club are trying to do is buy the right player, and the right player wasn't available for Spurs. Semenyo wasn't available for Spurs.
I get that, but it gets to a point where you're 5 points clear of the relegation zone. You've got to look at the short term more than the long term now, because they're in a relegation fight, aren't they? There's
Definitely.
no two ways about it. They're 5. If it was any other team who were 5 points clear of the relegation zone, we'd be saying they're in trouble. And it's February. It's not like we're in the early part of the season. We're coming into the last third of the season now.
And that's exactly why they sacked Thomas Frank, because they're worried they might go down. I think if they were 11th and 10 points clear of the relegation zone, I think they would have tried to stick it out, because that's what they're going for.
Yeah.
They want stability, and they just aren't able to have it because of the amount of issues they have, and that's not all on a manager.
All right, we'll move on to a team who are playing this week. Tonight's game, Hull City versus Chelsea, obviously in the FA Cup, like I mentioned. Rosenior's former club, both as a player and as a manager. Here's what the current Blues boss had to say ahead of this game.
2 key moments in the game where we don't take care of, we don't stay calm. Moy Caicedo's magnificent play has been top for me. We make a poor decision. Actually, how the play gets there as well. We make a few poor decisions in terms of how we press in that moment, and we give away a penalty when, genuinely, I can't remember Leeds having a shot or a moment in the game. Some of our football, in possession, our press, our energy was everything I wanted to see, and that makes it even more of a bitter pill to swallow that we haven't won the game.
Obviously, going into this game, coming off the back of throwing away that 2-goal lead against Leeds, drawing 2-2. Bit of concern for Rosenior, do you think, after that result? They can't. I mean, they sort of played into Leeds' hands, didn't they? They shot themselves in the foot with the way they defended that lead, or didn't defend that lead.
Yeah,
I
just
defended it at all.
I think a lot of that wasn't on Rosenior. I think a lot of that was on the team and the players. They're missing Levi Colwill in defence, which is a massive thing.
Missing him all season, though, to be fair.
Yeah, but in terms of the way they were playing, it was just mistakes, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't
errors that cost them, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think again the individual areas weren't just at the back. Colt Palmer really should have put him ahead and scored.
Yeah, I mean, if Palmer takes that chance, we're not talking about. I mean, maybe we're talking about the fact they let Leeds back into the game still, because that would have made it 3-2. But yeah, I mean, he's not going to miss that again probably in his career, is he?
And I just think that it's not on the manager, and this is the manager that they brought in for the long term. And I think that obviously Chelsea have problems now, and they need to get back in the top 4, and they need to keep pushing on. But I don't think that's anything to be worried about massively now, because Rosenior's going to have a transfer window in the summer. He's going to be able to bring in the players that he wants. He's only just come in, and I think that letting Leeds slip through individual errors isn't something on the manager completely at the moment.
Yeah, well, we know what to expect from Chelsea. Plenty of squad rotation, as they normally do. They rest players frequently, and at risk of injury, they take them out of the team. So you'd imagine there'd be quite a lot of squad rotation for this FA Cup clash against Hull. Yeah. Do you think that makes it a potential banana skin? I mean, Hull obviously championship side, competitive. What do you think?
I know I don't think that'd be a banana skin.
No.
But I think the point with rotation, it can go one of two ways, can't it? One, they're really pushing for a starting position and they give everything, or they're just not good enough, and that's why they're not starting. And I think it's probably closer to the second one with this Chelsea squad. They've got a massive squad, and I don't think there's any players that aren't in the starting 11 that are really pushing for it. So I think that they might struggle, but I don't see it being a banana skin for Chelsea.
Going for a Chelsea win?
I'm going for a Chelsea win.
I agree. I think they will make plenty of changes, and I think, like you say, it won't be comfortable. It'll be closer than they want it to be, but I still think they'll have it to get the win, personally. All right, moving on. Manchester City v Salford, 3 p.m. Saturday. Man, the last time we were on this show, Manchester City were playing in the FA Cup. You went for one of the predictions of the century in saying that Exeter would beat Manchester City. We're going to put the clip in now. Sorry to do this to you.
Oh, wait.
But it's got to be done.
This is my surprise prediction of the week. I think Exeter are going to win.
Really? Exeter to beat Man?
That's my prediction.
I didn't expect that at all. Wow. Well, there you go. I mean, we could come back at this and think about what a genius you are, but unfortunately, I just can't see it. Oh, there we heard it. You going for another upset in the FA Cup for Manchester City this time, or have you learned your lesson the hard way?
I think Manchester City will be fine. I'm not
repeating that mistake again.
No, I'm not. I think Manchester City, especially at home, it'll be a big game, big Manchester game, and I think Salford will be well up for it.
All right, well, here is what Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola had to say ahead of this one.
Our priority is beat Salford and go to the next round. Of course, in this competition, the last years have been magnificent what we have done, reaching finals, semi-finals. So, unfortunately, we could not win the last two finals, but being there was always a success. Always I think about that, and yeah, hopefully before this long week that I think we need, because we are so exhausted mentally, physically.
All right, well, we heard from Pep Guardiola there. Obviously, you'd imagine like Chelsea, they'll probably make quite a lot of changes for this one, but if they can get another win, it'd be massive week for Manchester City. You know, that win over Liverpool, which we should mention because we haven't spoke since then, and obviously that midweek win over Fulham as well. Now they've gone 4 points behind Arsenal, so they'll be full of confidence going into this one, won't they?
Yeah, and this is the time where Manchester City kind of come alive. We're in the running now. There's not long to go in the league.
The R. I thought the R word was relegation, but it's running. A new R word.
Relegation's probably for other teams. I think Manchester City will be fine.
Mention that.
Yeah,
definitely not.
But I just they're going into the running, and this is kind of where Pep Guardiola and Manchester City kind of come into their own. They tend to start slowly, and in the latter part of the season, they come into their own and they start winning games. And maybe it's the opposite with their title rivals. And this is the time where we're really going to see whether Manchester City can hold on to the league, and if they do what they usually do, which is they tend to go on a run near the end of the season, 10 in a row, 11 in a row, they really might be able to put some distance between them and Arsenal.
Like, you get people saying like, oh, the title race is done because Arsenal have, like, whatever, they had like an 8-point lead at some point. It's like, you just got to wait. Like, you can't draw any conclusions because it's going to change throughout the season, isn't it? You know, Arsenal might go a bit further ahead again, and Man City might narrow it to a point. And, you know, I think it's going to go right down to the wire. And I think that's always been the case with these two teams this season. I never thought Arsenal were going to run away with it, and likewise I never thought Manchester City were going to run away with it. So I think it's just going to go down right to the last game of the season.
And I think with Manchester City not having with Arsenal not having beaten Manchester City or Liverpool yet, I think that game in the Etihad is going to be massive, because Arsenal are really going to have to show what they're about in that game, and Manchester City at the Etihad are a strong team, and I think that's going to be the game that does it, because Arsenal are going to lose one game before the end of the season. Manchester City probably are going to lose another game at the end of the season, so it kind of depends that who budgets first.
There's twists and turns to come for sure. Both teams are not going to win all their games from now to the season. I will confidently make that prediction. Talking of predictions, so you're not going for a Salford City win at Manchester City then?
No, but I bet what's going to happen is Salford are going to win now. But no,
did the wrong week of the wrong upset.
But no, the Manchester City are definitely going this one.
I agree. I think no surprises there. I think Man City will win this one very comfortably. Okay, we'll move on to one of the big ties of the weekend, all Premier League tie, 5:45 p.m. Saturday, Aston Villa v Newcastle. I mean, tough tie for both sides really. This one, neither team would have wanted to draw the other, I think, at this stage of the competition. But on the flip side, it's a great chance for whoever goes through to have a really good cup run, isn't it? Because will have eliminated one of the strong teams in the competition.
Yeah, really unlucky for Aston Villa. They had Spurs last time.
I think that's quite lucky.
It's two Premier League sides in a row, and again, like you get anybody. It's not quite Macclesfield or Man City. Yeah, that's true.
We'll come on to them in a bit, but yeah.
But I just think it's much more difficult when you get a Premier League side, just because of the rotation aspect. As you love that with Premier League sides, I'm sure would love to rotate. They've got big squads, but it becomes more difficult when you're playing against Newcastle or you're playing against Aston Villa, who also have good squads and good backup squads. So suddenly, who do you replace? Who do you keep? You've probably got to keep a big player in there. So it probably becomes a managerial headache for Howe and Emery.
Yeah,
but probably a really good match of football, because Newcastle beat Spurs again. it was a better performance from them. They've been poor of late, but again, they might have just been playing Spurs, and that might just be why they look so much
really
better.
Struggled away from home this season, so I think that will give them a lot of confidence. I mean, both teams are having problems in midfield. Bruno Guimaraes has got another injury, which is a massive concern for Newcastle, because their record without him in the team is pretty terrible. He's so important to what they do, and I don't think Joe Linton and Lewis Miley are quite ready to come back again. Likewise, Villa have got John McGinn, Tielemans, Kamara out as well. So they're the sort of heartbeats of their teams, aren't they? So I think that's potentially why they've both have sort of dipped a little bit, although picked up more recently. But what do you think for this one? I mean, I think personally, I think whoever wins this could potentially go on and make the final. I think I've just got that feeling about this tie that whoever wins could potentially go on and go really far.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of good teams in the FA Cup. We'll touch on Arsenal later, but Manchester City and Chelsea we've already talked about.
Yeah.
Villa got to the semi-final last year, and Palace always tend to have their number. But I think that there's definitely is a cup run for either of these teams. Newcastle probably less so. They have looked poor away from home, and I definitely think that if they got even a top championship side in a draw, they could really struggle. And I think they might. In fact, I don't think that there will be another draw for them.
I think Aston Villa?
Yeah, I think Aston Villa are going to win this.
I think Newcastle might. I think they'll be full of confidence after that win over Tottenham. And I just fancy them. I think they could have another. They're a strong cup team as well, aren't they? They've had good runs in the cup competitions in the last couple of seasons. Obviously, Carabao Cup this year again. So, I'm going to go Newcastle. All right, move on to the late Saturday game. Liverpool v Brighton. Hard-fought away win for Liverpool at Sunderland. I mean, that'll give them a lot of confidence, I'm sure. Before we talk about that, here's what Arne Slot had to say ahead of their FA Cup tie against Brighton.
We've got three priorities: FA Cup, Champions League qualification, and the Champions League. But we're also aware of the limited options we have. So in terms of the squad. So the load management is important as well, because the last thing we could use right now is another injury. But that is always the difficult balance for a manager, including his performance staff and medical staff. What is the best decision to make every single time? And it is also true that it wouldn't be for the first time that a player could get injured if he has to play 3 games in 7 days. But it happened also many times that a player could just play 3 games in 7 days. So that's the challenge we're having. But the most important thing is we have to train today, see how the players doing, listen to them, how they feel, and then make the best possible decision.
Like I say, I think that win over Sunderland will give them a lot of confidence, because it was kind of a lot of things that they've been lacking this season. The away form's not been great. They've struggled against teams who are very direct and play the long ball, which Sunderland did, but they dealt with it really well. They've struggled from set pieces, but they scored the winner from a set piece. So it was it wasn't like an amazing display. I mean, the frustrating thing for Slot, which I think he touched on after the game, was that they still missed a lot of chances. They're creating way more chances. They're not scoring enough goals for the chances they're creating, but the kind of grit and determination they had to win that game, I think, will give them a lot of belief.
I just think that it was very anti-Liverpool this season performance, and I think that was what was so good about it. The goal coming from a Mo Salah corner into Van Dijk, you'd think is very Liverpool, but everything else about the performance is so different. They were winning headers, they were winning second balls, which we haven't really seen Liverpool do. I know Slots talks about it in press conferences, and he talks about long balls, and he talks about kind of the ball getting lost in the wind and strikers getting there first. And I just think that the fact that they were able to do that, especially against the Sunderland side, which have been so good this season, and the thing they've been so good at are just being more direct and more willing than any other team, and that's their main thing. And Liverpool were more willing than Sunderland, and even though it was 1-0, you talked about the missed chances. Liverpool could have won that by so many more, and I just think it was, and I think that's what Slot will want in terms of, it's just a good performance. I think that will be important to him.
Yeah, I mean, they've played a lot better this season and not won, so you'd much rather that win.
Yeah,
wouldn't you? Results are everything at this stage of the season.
Definitely.
Like I say, they're facing Brighton, who we're talking about, managers getting sacked, but I mean, Fabian Hurtzler's under the real pressure. They got booed off last week. They're on a really poor run of form, but they did knock out Man United in the last round.
Yeah,
so this is a big game for them as well.
I think they've been unlucky this season, in the sense that there are a lot of players that they've had and a lot of injuries that they've had that have not been helpful for the team, and also they put in a lot of good performances. And again, a bit like Liverpool, we're talking about Liverpool playing well and not getting the results. And I think that's been a lot of what Brighton have been doing. They've been getting chances, they've been playing some nice football, as you would see a Hurtzler side do, but they just haven't been able to get the results. They haven't had the grit.
Yeah,
but
I think it's just a bit frustrating for them. They've kind of gone back over the last year, from where they were under De Zerbi.
Yeah,
they've kind of gone a step backwards. I mean, Brighton being in the Premier League, competing well, shouldn't be taken for granted. But I think that's where the frustration comes from, maybe from the fans.
I think a lot of it was they've been so good in transfer windows before. They've been the team that's kind of been
They haven't
unearthing
quite hit
gems.
as many as they had done previously, I don't think.
And some of the ones they've bought recently just haven't
hard to-
hit the
It's hard
haven't hit
to
the heights.
continue that, isn't it? Well, with that in mind, what are you thinking for this one? What's your prediction?
I think Liverpool are going to go through.
I agree. Yeah, I think Liverpool at home. I think they'll win this one. Yeah, I'm confident they will.